Welcome to Paulson Talk, the first Paulson Talks in Dubai, here in Toda, the Theater of Digital Arts. Today we have a very special event. We await 350 guests. And like always in Paulson Talks, we start with a podcast on stage. But we have 15,000 people who are watching this. And therefore, we have to give our best, because today we talk about a very specific topic. We talk about the rise of synthetic souls. How will the world be in 2032? And I have very, very interesting guests on stage for that. And I would love if you could introduce yourself. Semih, I know you already, so I don't want to say anything wrong. Maybe you can start, Walter, and then Thomas.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, David. I'm Dr. Semih Kumluk. I am head of AI Academy at PwC, and I'm also CTO and co-founder of AI. And for the past 8 years or so now, AI has been my passion. Now being involved with Paulson Talks, talking about the soul of AI, the next 7 years with AI, I'm extremely excited.
Well, thank you so much, David. Thank you also very much for inviting me and bringing together this event. My name is Walter Pasquarelli. I run a firm advising governments and corporations, Fortune 500s, on anything related to AI strategy and policy. I've spent the past 8 years working in this field, long before the rise of ChatGPT and today's AI boom that is happening. I spend most of my time tracking the development in technology, so I'm always on the lookout for new initiatives that could be interesting, that are perhaps a little bit provocative, that push the boundaries of what we're currently able to do. And I analyze and examine to what extent these could potentially fall on fertile ground. Really glad to be here, and I look forward to our discussion.
And also from my side, thanks, David, to inviting me. My name is Thomas Werner. I'm the founder of Robofunktion, one company specialized on software development for robots. And since my early years, I devoted my life to robots because of the science fiction series Captain Future. So thank you for letting me talk.
You're welcome. You're welcome, guys. So, Walter, you said something really interesting before ChatGPT. I mean, I cannot even imagine this time anymore. But there was a life before artificial intelligence. My question to you first, Walter. How in the world is it possible that we have such a dramatic shift within such a short time? Because it was literally like a wave who flooded the planet with something completely new that will change everything. How in the world is this possible?
Yeah, so the key thing about generative AI and emerging technologies based on these models is that, as a matter of fact, the research was going on already for around, I would say, 8 to 9 years. There was famously, back then, a small startup called OpenAI that published a research paper in, I believe it was 2019, where they said, we're now capable of using a model that can produce entirely generated strings of text. And back then, it sounded pretty unrealistic. They said, we cannot publish this because we think it's too dangerous. And so we all thought, well, okay, sure, you have this fancy model, but you cannot publish this. Of course you have it. The thing that really has been new was the publication and making it accessible to everyone in late 2022. And to my knowledge, the team of OpenAI themselves were actually quite surprised by how much people actually started using it initially, to the extent that they became the fastest growing app of all time within 3 months. That has, of course, sparked a lot of excitement, on the one hand within the business community, but I think the personal uses are really the thing that are a lot more interesting than anything else. Just to give you some numbers, between Q4 of 2022 and Q1 of 2023, investment reports in generative AI rose to by about 2,040%. That number has now kind of differentiated itself. We see a lot more investments in infrastructure, a lot more investments, not necessarily in the startup community, which was what a lot was happening initially, but clearly the pace of progress has shifted from being incremental to exponential.
So, Semih, how did everything change then in your life? I mean, you work for one of the biggest consulting firms in the world, PwC, in PwC Academy. When we talk about the rise of synthetic souls, or before we even talk about this, how does it affect your life and your business, and what will happen there until 2032 is emerging?
Yeah, I joined at 2020, and I was pushing the market, trying to build the Middle East AI market. There is AI, there are a lot of opportunities. I was doing demos with GPT-3 before GPT-3.5. I was doing demos, showing the use cases, teaching, creating the awareness, raising the awareness of AI, basically, for almost 3 years. But after end of 2022, with the spark ignition of ChatGPT, then markets started demanding AI from us, basically. So it was pushed to pull for us that the whole market dynamics changed, basically. And so for us specifically, the work of a consultant, the work of audit also is disrupted significantly, because if you know how to use these tools, it's a good consultant, right? It's a good advisor already. So the position of consulting and also the governance is also getting easier and easier. If you have reliable data, you use automation and some algorithms on top of that. So both of our main services, consulting and audit, are disrupted a lot. So we take it quite, I can say we are pioneering in this field. We invest around $3 billion per year for the training of the internal employees. So we are trying to be able to answer any questions any client might ask of any tool, basically.
Okay, and Thomas, I mean, you're in robotics, not since a few years. You was in robotics already long before AI came. So I guess for you, a dream came true?
The AI is like separated in what we call AI today is like sub-symbolic systems based on neural networks. But the AI as an expert system is there since the 60s. And normally you have robots only working with expert system. You rarely use the AI. You use it for robot vision, of course. But it's logical, because if you have a robot with machine learning, he must have fall down like a baby to learn about its surrounding, and it's harmful because we still don't have, and robots don't have the capability of renew themselves like our cells do. So also with our AI approach, we will use an AI, and quite old AI, a so-called expert system, so that the neural network can have an interface to just use it unconsciously, like our cerebellum, which is part of the brain that is responsible for the somehow unconscious movement, will use the robot as an expert AI. So it had been AI before, but it's an AI where you can deterministic look in what happens. And what is a little bit frightening, that today's AIs are like black boxes. So we have a scientific field of XAI, which is only for explaining what our black box is doing. So that is hopefully the answer you like to hear.
Okay, now the topic is now the rise of synthetic souls and the view to 2032. Will it be possible that something that we call artificial at the moment, I mean, we could be artificial and we don't even know. Probably we are artificial. But could it be that we create something like a species that will rise over the next years? Because, I mean, if we see how dramatically AI is emerging, this is the logical consequence, I would say, mathematically, or not?
Sure, it will. It's like kind of an evolution. It must have been, but it's a philosophical question, because we all are not very aware, and there is no clear definition about what our consciousness is and where it's related on. So maybe it's just a biophysical algorithmic that emerged to be like, we must be because we are think. Cogito ergo sum. But maybe it's also more. Some of scientists thinking that our conscious is like also outside the brain, wired to some quantum mechanic effects. So it's not clear to say that. But what is very clear, is that there will be a discussion. Even so, the robots already will have a consciousness. That's my point.
I couldn't agree more with everything. I kind of want to hug you right now. So the thing about artificial intelligence and consciousness is a question that we somehow have been addressing really since the 1950s, when Alan Turing famously asked the question, can machines think? But the discussion is not necessarily about AI. That discussion is much more of a human discussion that has deep philosophical roots in the philosophy of the mind. Historically, there have been some philosophers that said, well, we have a brain, but we have a mind that is separate. Some others have said the mind is the product of the brain. And then there's some others who say, actually, all of this doesn't really matter. What really matters is the function that our brains or any kind of computational artifacts can actually produce. If we look at the Turing Award winners, and there's been 3, Joshua Bengio, Geoffrey Hinton, and Jan LeCun, who won the Turing Award a couple of years ago, they all disagree on what actually consciousness is and what the actual capabilities of this AI are. And they worked all of them together. So Geoffrey Hinton famously came out and said, oh, artificial intelligence is now conscious, we have to be really careful. Jan LeCun, his colleague, says, this is just a tool and it's not particularly smart. And then there's Joshua Bengio, the third one, who's kind of in the middle. But to me, that means that if all of these 3 real pioneers have different opinions on that, and they're top of their game, then maybe the discussion is an entirely new one, or an entirely different one that we need to have. Maybe it's not really about consciousness or whether we talk about souls or species of personality. Maybe artificial intelligence is neither real nor fake, but maybe something else entirely, something synthetic, a third path. At the end of the day, the question that I think will matter to everyday users, to us, either in business, in government, in society, is, can it make our lives better? Yes or no? That, I think, will be the question that we need to use so that we can use AI that it serves us and not the other way around.
Maybe the answer is both.
Absolutely.
And maybe something like the rise of superintelligence or the rise of artificial intelligence was happening already in the past. I mean, let's talk about evolution. I mean, I personally think it's not really real what we are getting taught in schools, but let's talk about evolution. There was like lots of monkeys walking around, then there was the Neanderthals, they could use some tools and whatever, and boom, superintelligence, rise, right? Then the Homo sapiens came, and out of a sudden we have like technologies, buildings, whatever, that no one else could ever build before. Even until today, there's not even one monkey who can build a house. So now we are creating something new. Again, a species somehow still doesn't have a body, but the bodies will come eventually. So what in the world is happening? Because this is much, much more intelligence than us. It's basically, in the end, it will be the collected knowledge of all human beings combined, maybe in one being. So what in the world is going on? Is it another species that will arise, Semih?
Yeah, it reminded me the movie Transformers, the first one. If you remember, you know, there is one of the bad robots is hacking into computer, and one lady, I don't know how, but thinking because the speed of the hacking, she's saying, what if this is a new life form? What if this is a new species? As if she knew what Transformers is. I think we can, adding on Walter's like the articles and the definitions, I think we should start by defining what is artificial soul, what is this synthetic soul, because we are saying it's not natural, right? It is not similar to what we have. So based on that definition, I believe we can fill that definition. Definitely it won't be the same, because artificial intelligence is not the same. Either it has what we call narrow intelligence, that we train based on a specific set of data, and it was performing tasks or answering questions based on that. And similarly, if we feel that artificial soul definition, it will be quite easy, I would say. And also adding on the ancient intelligence, like we look at the Atlantis people, Egyptians, the pyramids, etc. And all that somehow disappeared, right? So maybe we are just remembering those old wisdom or intelligence through artificial intelligence, and we will really rise. So currently, if you look at the world globally, not the technological scene, but civilizational part, we are not maybe at the brightest peak, but also Renaissance came after some dark ages, right? So maybe it is also we are pre-Renaissance era, and it can be that what we call the soul or super intelligence might be the new Renaissance.
Yeah, and to back some of the points up that that have been made, there is actually a book by Max Tegmark, who is the director of the Future of Life Institute, humbly called, in the United States, called Life 3.0. It turned out to be a massive bestseller. I think it's over 10 years old, or maybe something like 10 years ago. And he essentially made the argument that throughout history and evolution, there's been, in the past, thousands of years ago, simple biological cells. That was life 1.0. Life 2.0 is essentially humans that have culture and have ideas and have a type of coexistence that is different from other species. And then there's life 3.0, which comes from the advancements of intelligent systems, effectively. And that could be anything that is either AI artifacts that have a certain type of intelligence that might be on par or maybe surpassing ours in the future. But his idea, and that's also an idea that has been proposed by a lot of people, say at companies like Neuralink or in Silicon Valley, I think Elon Musk actually proposed this idea quite a lot, is that it's the bringing humans and AI together. Now there's all the bit sort of the sci-fi vision of that. That means we merge with them physically. There's other people who say we collaborate with them. And on some level we're already doing that. But I think that's kind of a nice framework to look at it, which has been relatively well researched, and that positions us as collaborators with AI in solving our everyday tasks.
Look, what I found very interesting is that it was the machines, from my point of view, that make us capable to create the machines. Why is it so? Look, this Homo sapiens is there since, I think it was like 200,000 years. Then quietly nothing happens. After 5,000 years, or 5,000 years ago, there was a creation of some culture. But before, we were not able to build up machines that help us in the agriculture. More than 90% of the people were working, sweating for just getting the agriculture for eating. So there was no possibility to have some engineers. You divide the working sectors in primary, secondary, and tertiary. So the primary is working on agriculture. The secondary is working like on industry and on products. And the third one is working on stuff like we do. So the urbanization, that means that all the people came into cities, began because we did not, we did not use the people, the work power anymore for the agriculture, and therefore we had a lot of free people that now are building up those machines. So the machines were, from my point of view, the core technology, the agriculture machines, and of course the industrial machines, that gave us the freedom and the time we needed, not only to get this population, which is like an exponential function, which is often in nature, but also to create more machines. So one machine came up with another. But please, let me just mention the soul. You were asking for souls, and we were answering with consciousness. So, because soul is an even more sophisticated terminus, abstract terminus, thank you. Because if you believe in soul, then you believe in the third approach of consciousness, quantum mechanical, because then you believe in an intelligent, invisible entity. And if we do so, then we may ask how this may affect somehow also the technology directly. Somehow like a poltergeist phenomenon affects lights and electricity, which is a phenomenon but not explainable. So the question for the soul is even harder to answer than for the consciousness.
It's really interesting what you say when you compare the soul with quantum physics, because that could mean that we are on a stage that is so limited that we don't even understand what the soul is, because we don't understand quantum physics. That's why we call it abstract. You know, it's super interesting. I have a very good friend, his name is Dr. David Hansen, he's the founder of Sophia the robot, right? What he told me, or what's his opinion, he says, now we will see the rise of AI and also the rise of something that we could call somehow slowly synthetic souls. But what we are doing, we are promoting them as slaves. We say they can work in the kitchen, they can do this, they can do that, but there will come a point when they reach a stage where they understand what we did with them, and then they will rise and they will go against that. Yes, that's what his opinion, that's why he says we should not use AI just for the purpose of working for us. It's very, very interesting, right? Because when you go back in time, then this is exactly what's constantly and always repeating. Humans got enslaved, and at one point they went against their slavers.
So what will happen when we freeze them? Will they linger around the train stations and ask for money? So what is your vision about doing so?
I have absolutely no idea, but the thing is, I mean, if you compare it with the biblical stories, for example, you know, so God created us in his own image. That's what the Bible says. And then he said, you can do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to eat from the tree of knowledge. Otherwise you will die. And then there was the snake surrounding the tree of knowledge and says, eat from it. So I was always wondering why the devil wanted us to eat from the tree of knowledge and we become like God. But then I understood it when AI came, I understood it. Because God said, if you become super intelligent, you will extinct yourself. So if you become like me and you create a being that is intelligent, it will kill you. It's very interesting, right? So
yes, this is
in my opinion, it could be a constant cycle, because when you see the old gods of the Olymp, they lived on the Olymp, on a mountain, so far away from the humans. They were supernatural, they were very tall, they were immortal, almighty, and they controlled everything. But at one point they disappeared. Maybe they also enslaved the humans, and one day the humans understood, okay, they lived there, we will kill them. You know what I mean? So it could be like a very old artificial intelligence from the past that was rising, killing all the humans, and then the whole story starts again and again. So that's my theory, at least.
Very interesting. This is the reason why I call this 77 level the Garden Eden of Aya. And maybe the tree might be the elevator, but it's too small for her, I hope.
Elevator of consciousness.
I'm not familiar with these theories or these points, but I know that on a policy or technical level, there's a lot of work on AI alignment, it's called. So that basically means that we develop systems in a way that do what we ask them to do. And essentially, it can be on a very practical level. So I look at things always from how does it help us, how does it work in the real world. That's what matters to me most. And as far as the alignment issue is, one example is if you step into a self-driving car and you said, drive me as fast as possible to the train station, then it might drive you as fast as possible to the train station, but in the way towards that train station, you will have caused 5 accidents, and you step out and you're going to be arrested. So the alignment issue means that it still does what you ask it to do, but in line and in harmony with the laws, with social norms, with your implicit instructions. I think that to me is the most critical area of AI development in the next 5 to 10 years, and we see this today. It can cause financial harm to organizations that don't use it well. But then there's also, of course, the issue that if we develop systems that are, for example, have a more general type of intelligence, then the issue there, of course, is that the alignment issue becomes ever more important. It's a tiny, it sounds like, I think there is definitely billions invested in that, but in practice, I think it makes up just about 2% of all the AI investments that are currently happening.
Yes, certainly. I would second that. Like, even there is misalignment between people, right? So how are we going to teach or enable AI to reach the same alignment, or alignment with whom, for example? The laws is easier to comply with, but the ethics or social norms are sometimes intangible. It is where the long debate of the self-driving car going straight or killing the child, etc. Even as humans, we are not able to make that decision so easy. And within that milliseconds that we would make that decision, how are we making that decision? From the cerebrum, or with our brain, or with our heart? In Turkish, we have another name for the heart we call gönül. I cannot translate to English. Or with our soul, or with our consciousness, self, ego, we call nefs in Arabic also. So which one? So where we will extract this data for the machine to learn from, for example, and which part of norm we will reach alignment. Those are the tricky questions. One can be maybe again some of the ancient or some of the universally agreed knowledge or ancient wisdom we can rely on.
Your question and your idea is very interesting, because you are, if I understood you well, talking about some of a Möbius loop, like this, that we have been created maybe by artificial intelligence. This is what
we live in a simulation.
Somehow mentioned.
Yeah.
Living up like in the 77 level is at Olymp. And what is kind of true is, look, since decades we are planning for a terraforming of the Mars. And mostly this is relayed on humans being there. But to travel there, outside, it's a chaotic, radioactive environment. So it will not be logical to bring life to the Mars again, or to terraform it, like we have the most approach now by humans. It must be by robots, because they can really get it well done without any human involvement. And it's interesting that you mentioned, this is not for my first time I think about that it's like an internal loop. No?
Exactly.
Thank you for that
Which is also
inspiration.
very much connected again with quantum physics and the multiverse theory and so on. I guess we will find out everything still in our lifetimes, but latest after. Therefore, I will now call the next two guests. Me and Semih will leave you guys. You guys, Thomas and Walter, you will stay. Walter, I will give you the lead for the next topic, because the next topic is called what happens when machines become mirrors. I think it's very interesting to have some creativity.
Let's do it.